Greenfield Peace Scholarship 2021 awards ceremony. Thank you for joining us. My name is Katie Morrow, and I am the Program Assistant at Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility. Guided by the values and expertise of healthcare and public health, Oregon PSR works to protect human life from the gravest threats to health and survival by striving to protect our climate, end the nuclear threat, promote peace, and advance justice. We seek a healthy, just, and peaceful world for present and future generations. We will begin with a land acknowledgement.
So we begin. For thousands of years, the indigenous people lived in right relationship with the land, air, and water. Through millennia, their knowledge and life ways sustained people, plants, and animals, and did not contribute to the current environmental crises that we now face. We honor and acknowledge the resilience of this land and of the people and cultures whose stewardship predates colonization. As organizations and individuals, we stand with indigenous communities, protecting the health of our planet, and apologize for the myriad of ways colonization has been harmful to indigenous people and the land, and we acknowledge the need for reparations and healing.
Thank you to Chisao Hata for sharing the land acknowledgement. We will now hear from Bonnie Reagan, the daughter of Del Greenfield. She will tell us about Del, who inspired the Greenfield Peace Contest.
And my name is Bonnie Reagan. I'm the middle child of Del Greenfield and Lou Greenfield, and I live in Portland, Oregon. So I've had what I call kind of a crooked career. I started out as a high school teacher. I lived on the East Coast, but I moved west to get my Master of Arts in Teaching at Reed College. And I taught in the public schools for 1 year, and then after that in alternative schools for for 4.5 years, and had 2 children during that time. And then my husband was also a teacher, and he ended up going to medical school. And I started sitting in on some of his classes and decided I wanted to go into the medical field. So I did 2 things. I went to, I worked part-time for a psychiatric day treatment center in order to get kind of counseling experience. And at the same time, I started nursing school. So during my time at the nursing school, I decided I really wanted to be a doctor a lot because it gave me more options to do what I wanted to do. And so at the age of 34 with 2 children, I started medical school and practiced medicine from 1987 until 2009 as a family medicine doctor. So that's kind of my story. I also sang in a choral group. I did social justice work with Physicians for Social Responsibility, which I joined as a freshman medical student in 1980 and have been a member ever since. So my mom, Del Greenfield, is the daughter of immigrants who fled persecution in Western Ukraine in the late 1800s. And she was the first generation born in the United States in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, one of 6 children. Excuse me. And her family was poor, and she could not attend college because she didn't have enough money. She also finished high school very young. She finished high school when she was 15, turned 16 shortly thereafter, and then worked for the rest of her life until she was 83. I think she worked from age 16 to 83. And a lot of her work was, she started out as a secretary, and then my dad was a pharmacist, and we moved from Philadelphia to New Jersey, and they started their own pharmacy, and she worked in the pharmacy for years. And then during the Vietnam War period, I was in a Quaker school, and she got really interested in what was going on in the anti-war movement. And she left the pharmacy, and I think my dad actually sold the store right around then. And she started doing social justice work, peace activism during the Vietnam War period, and did that ongoing. She and my dad moved out here in 1973, did a series of jobs, and then eventually applied to be the head of Physicians for Social Responsibility. And she was the head of that for 16 years, I believe. So my mom was really a genius, especially in administrative, executive type stuff. And I think if she had had the education that I had, she would have been an executive of a company the same way that my sister is now. And but she didn't have those opportunities, so she did what she could. And I feel like her sense of organizational skills, her sense of ethics, she had very powerful ethical quality about her, and so did my dad. And her always educating herself, always learning things, learning everything from learning Hebrew to some extent to learning about the ACLU and working for the ACLU, learning about Audubon, learning about birds, learning tap dance. She was very curious and was always a learner. In her later years, she ended up going to Russia. She went to Hiroshima for peace activism conferences. And she always seemed to me to be curious, learning, open-minded. She was amazingly open-minded, actually. I had a gay friend, one of my best friends in the 1960s, and she was all for gay pride back in the 1960s. And she worked for racial equity, and she worked for peace. She was she had a wide-ranging mind, and she was way ahead of her time in her attitudes. But she not only had good attitudes, she put them into practice. She had lots of ideas. When the draft ended, she held a funeral for the draft with a whole, parade and a box that the draft was in, a wooden box and stuff like that. And she helped to organize demonstrations. My mom was arrested twice at the Nevada test site, and she had an FBI record, we found out later on. So did my husband. My husband resisted the draft. And so both of them, my husband and my mom, had FBI records, which we got to look at, and a lot of things were blacked out, but the things that weren't blacked out were really boring. She went here, and then she went there, and then she went there at like peace demonstrations in Washington. She encouraged her kids to do anything and everything that they could. She exposed us to music lessons. She exposed us to Girl Scouts and to swimming lessons and everything that she could think of to broaden our horizons. And I had a lot of friends who were really jealous that I had the mom that I had. And I think one of the reasons why I've had a really good life, a rich life, a fulfilling life, is because of the gifts of loving and exposure to other people and other ideas that my mom gave me. She was a real leader. She did crossword puzzles in ink. And you have to understand that she was an immigrant girl. She wasn't an immigrant, but she was born in the United States, but her parents were immigrants. And English was her second language. She didn't learn English until she went to school when she was 5 years old. But she was a master in writing letters. She was always writing letters. My cousin was the chief of staff for Ron Wyden for a while. And he said if he didn't receive a monthly letter from my mom giving Ron Wyden hell for something or other, he wondered if there was anything wrong with her, and he'd call her up and make sure she was okay. But she loved Ron Wyden, but if there was anything going on that she disagreed with, she let him know it. She was very accountable. She was very responsible. And one of the biggest things she taught the three of us, my sister, brother, and I, were that your job in life was to serve people. You were to get educated. You could educate yourself. You tried to have the best education you could. You continued learning, and then you offered your services to serve people, to serve your community. And that has been my mantra for all these years. She had incredible creativity, and she had an incredible sense of service, many, many, many friends. And I'm just lucky and honored to be her daughter. In terms of the Greenfield contest, she donated money to Oregon PSR at her death. And PSR asked me what we should do with it. And I said my mom absolutely believed in fostering youth participation. And when she worked at the South Jersey Peace Center in South Jersey, across the country, she had both an art contest and I think she had a writing contest too. I still have two of the posters from the art contest by children about war and peace. So we wanted the money to be used to encourage youth to learn about issues, social justice issues, and to somehow involve them. And then that morphed into the peace essay contest and now an art contest. And my mom would be thrilled to see how many young people have been involved and what it has done for them.
Chisao Hata is a performing artist, community organizer, and global citizen artist. Her work shares the Japanese-American story to communities from Hiroshima, Japan to Cuba and New Mexico to Ontario, Oregon. As an arts educator, her perspectives are shared as an Oregon Humanities conversation leader and Vanport Mosaic Festival Stories in Movement artist and community weaver. She originated Gambate Be Strong, Stories of Japanese American Displacement and Resilience in Portland, and is a partnering artist at the Dance Exchange in Tacoma Park, Maryland. Chisao will now speak on the changes that the scholarship program has undergone over the past year.
Hi, my name's Chisao Hata, and I'm an advisory board member of the Oregon chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility. I'm glad to be here today as an artist and a community activist to talk a little bit about what this year has been. We all know it's been the year of the pandemic. It's also been a year of a lot of pivoting. And in our Greenfield writing contest, we also pivoted, not just because we wanted to, but because of the environment of social change and social justice work that we saw throughout the summer, and the voices of Black and Indigenous people of color rising and being listened to. And so it was a time that we felt was important to turn our eyes and our priorities to people of color and communities of color and young people of color, to give them an opportunity to express themselves in not only writing, but in a visual art form. And so I find that that's been a very important role that PSR can play for us this year in how we've been looking at inviting what judges we've invited to participate this year to this wonderful contest that we've had going on for many years now. So I want to talk just briefly about the role of art and the artist in society. And oftentimes we look at the artist as someone who holds us up or gives us something to reflect on or has things in grand halls. But really, the role of the artist in social change is to be in the forefront of that change, of actually to be leading that change. And we saw that throughout this summer up until now, artists who are engaged in not only street art, but creating murals, creating altars, creating posters and flyers, and all the visual things that were important to keep the movement going. And so art is not a separate thing. Art helps us really express who we are during the worst of times. And I'd like to just uplift a quote by Toni Morrison that was used in art contests this year. So she says, art invites us to take the journey beyond price, beyond costs, into bearing witness to the world as it is and as it should be. Art invites us to know beauty and to solicit it from even the most tragic of circumstances. Art reminds us that we belong here. So congratulations to our Greenfield Scholarship art students this year, and we look forward to seeing you more.
As Chisao said, we changed the focus of the scholarship to be visual arts. Here is what we asked the applicants to respond to. The past year has seen a multitude of upheavals throughout the world and in the United States. COVID-19 continues to spread throughout the U.S. and disproportionately impact Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. In the effort to combat the spread of COVID-19, Oregon's most vulnerable people do not receive any consistent or effective support from governmental agencies or governmental resources. Systems of power fail to provide basic necessities such as running water, shelter, quality health care, etc., to those most disadvantaged by oppressive systems. Oregon's wildfire season, worsened by the climate crisis, deeply scarred the land, displaced thousands of people throughout the state, endangered farm workers, and showed us just how much privilege determines survival, even in emergency situations. The Black Lives Matter movement advocates for the basic rights to life, dignity, safety, and health care. The movement protests the extreme violence against Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities that has been and continues to be enacted by racist people who are further empowered by systemically racist and oppressive policing systems. Oregon is now recognized by the federal government as a place of disruption and unrest, which has only been worsened by both the action and inaction from local and federal administrations. During the pandemic, environmental crises, and protests, visual art is an integral part of communication, memorialization, and catalyzation. As members of a world, nation, state, and community, we are called to pursue integrity and equality at a time when those we look to as leaders speak, act, create policies, and prioritize spending in ways that inhibit the pursuit of truth and justice. We find ourselves living in a time when systems of power widen disparities of all kinds, and the individuals in power can freely voice overtly racist, sexist, classist, and oppressive opinions. All the while, speaking out against these wrongs dramatically increases the risk of harm, ostracization, and death. These circumstances and events can be overwhelming, and the challenges at times may seem insurmountable. We all, however, can listen, learn, speak, and act in ways that strive for a better and safe world. Art is a powerful form of activism that can reach beyond social and cultural boundaries. Create a piece that uplifts and claims your experiences and understanding of the events of the past year. We would now like to introduce you to the judges and to share some of the artwork that they do in their daily lives. Kezia Setyawan is a recent graduate of the University of Oregon, where she majored in journalism. She is currently a general reporter at the Courier and Daily Comet newspapers in Houma Thibodaux in South Louisiana. Setyawan believes that beauty is found in small details of behavior. Her work centers and amplifies the voices of those who have been pushed to the margins through storytelling. Lamara, whose pronouns are she, her, emigrated from Kingston, Jamaica to Portland, Oregon at the age of 7. She has been in Portland ever since. Her high school art teacher, Charlene Simmons, helped foster Lamara's interest in art. Lamara creates colorful 2D mixed media work. She sometimes shares that work on Instagram at Lamara A. Maker. Leah Altman, Oglala Lakota, and Persian. Leah grew up in the Portland urban Native American community and comes from a background in Portland area social service and environmental justice nonprofits, primarily in grant writing and donor development. She works for the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation and is on the board for Advancing Gender Equity in the Arts and the advisory board for Portland State University's book publishing program. Leah received her MA in writing through PSU's book publishing program and is currently working on a second master's in writing through the Institute of American Indian Arts. She has been published in several magazines, including Indian Country Today, PSU's Metroscape, and Online Brass magazine, and she is working on her first book. Leah is an alum of the Portland Emerging Arts Leaders Mentorship Program and the Coalition of Communities of Color's Bridges Program. Her passions include beadwork, poetry, cooking, and playing pool. Matt is from Phoenix, Arizona, but before arriving in Portland, he taught in South Korea for 4 years as an ESL teacher. He's been writing for 11 years and had short stories published in a handful of digital publications. He is currently working on his first full-length novel, a sci-fi tale about captives in space. In his free time, he loves playing with his 2 cats, Liam and Edward, as well as watching films and reading everything he can get his hands on. Lastly, he is a big nerd who enjoys Marvel comics and manga. Yukio Kawano, an artist, performer, educator, and Cascadia Arts Film Festival coordinator, is a third-generation Hibakusha, atomic bomb survivor who grew up decades after the bombing of Hiroshima. Her artwork is a direct response to the tragedy of the past, she states, but the past I depict wants to remember the present. People say my work is like a dream. It is not meant to deliver certainties. It asks us to remain in the present so that we can develop a new relationship of mind and body, confront the ongoing deceptive rhetoric that surrounds us, reject violence, and save ourselves from our own extinction. Kawano teaches through VCFA Studio Mentorship Program and is an Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility Advisory Board member. She currently lives in Portland, Oregon.
Hi everyone, my name is Lamara Haynes and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I was one of the judges for the Greenfield Peace Scholarship. Congratulations to all the winners. It's especially cool that you took the time to create something unique, something from the vestiges of your soul, so to speak, and were vulnerable enough to share them. Congratulations again. A little bit about me. I make art in my free time, usually using the mediums of colored pencil, marker, watercolor, or acrylic. I try to use things that are easily accessible. Just in case somebody else wants to make stuff, I can kind of point them in the direction of how to easily get widely available supplies. A lot of my art has a political message. Maybe it might not be obvious right away by just looking at it, but there usually is an underlining political message. As a queer, immigrant, Black femme, I think that almost everything is political, if not everything, and that's important to acknowledge. I think that's about it. I do have an Instagram where I sometimes share my art. I'm trying to get better at that. It is my first name, Lamarra, Lamarra, dot, as in a period, followed by A as in apple, period again, followed by the word maker, Maker, Lamarra A Maker, to kind of symbolize that I'm just a person, one person named Lamarra that also makes things, like many people, including yourselves. All right, congratulations, enjoy your win, and good luck with your next steps. Peace.
Matt is a writer, and he has shared an excerpt with us from his sci-fi novel, Faces in the Well. Darkness, darkness. They awoke on their backs atop a hot surface, stiff like a plank, with a thick rubber mask bound to their face. Their wrists, ankles, and throat burned from the tight straps which fastened them down and immobile. Dozens of souls began to scream and bellow, only to realize the apparatus attached to their skull sent a wide tube down their esophagus. They gagged and thrashed and snarled to no effect as they lay pinned shoulder to ankle between strangers. Who were these people? No one could tell. Even if they could lift their head, it was pitch black.
Hi, I'm Kezia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently a reporter at a small local newspaper in South Louisiana, but I am an Oregon native. I recently graduated from the University of Oregon, June 2020. So I decided that it might be a good time just to like show you all what I did for my thesis. So last year I did a thesis project called Di Mana di Sini, which is Indonesian for where are we are here. Basically what I wanted to do is show the breadth and depth of Chinese Indonesian experiences and perspectives regarding to identity and like what does it mean to be placed in the diaspora. So here is my great aunt Omarena in her home in Jakarta. And I really did all of my portraits as like I did all my portraits as single lit portraits in their environment, just to highlight the mundane and everyday sort of life. I'll guide you through one of these clips. So here is my great uncle, Opa Sim. And I think an interesting thing about Chinese Indonesian identity is the intersections of race and politics, and how even US imperialism, while not direct, influenced how we perceive and percept ourselves, because of the fact that we were all asked to change our last names in the 60s. And that's a direct consequence of a US military-backed coup. So I think like there's a lot to be gained about who we are, where we come from, and if we're forcibly asked to change our name and to shed like Chinese aspects of identity, what does that mean then to, I suppose, become Indonesian or like assimilate to a nationalist idea of Indonesia, and then also have to immigrate later. So I'll play his clip here.
Ada nama banyak nih.
Oke, semuanya.
Semuanya. Ya, nama asalnya ya dari orang tua. Namanya Sim Kim Tiao. Kim Tiao itu artinya 1 juta emas yang lagi tenggelam dalam laut. Ya. Nah, setelah ganti nama menjadi Indonesia, saya bikin nama Sujata Suwarna. Sujata itu dari asal mulanya burung Garuda yang yang disukai oleh Rama. Jatayu namanya. Dari Jatayu itu saya ambil jatanya. Jadi Sujata itu senjata. Senjata, lalu suwarnanya diambil dari bahasa Sanskerta yang artinya emas. Jadi kalau kita kesimpulannya, Sujata Suwarna itu senjata yang dari emas. Senjata yang bagus yang dari emas. Itu dia. Ya. Jadi kita harapkan nama kita itu bagus. Orangnya juga nanti berperilaku bagus. Jangan seleweng, jangan korupsi, jangan berbohong, jangan benci sama orang. Itu yang kita harapkan. Mudah-mudahan kita panjang umur. Bisa lebih dari 80. Mungkin juga 100 gitu. ya gitu aja ya. Harapin semua orang yang mendengar omongan saya supaya saya doakan saya supaya sehat selalu, panjang umur, bisa berjalan kuat, jadi bisa jalan-jalan terus tiap hari.
Yeah, and I think that the combination of being able to take portraits and record audio, especially of elders and family members and friends, has been really pivotal for me in particular, especially maybe sometimes folks can feel growing up like, oh, I don't feel like connected, or I don't really know where I come from. And just sort of like push back against the narrative of like assimilation and just becoming like in a homogenous identity of like being Asian American, but like then interrogating what those nuances are and pushing back on really simplified stereotypes and structures that I think then becomes really easy to be like, oh, then I should be assimilative to like white America and be American. And I think that this project helps me push back on that, and that's really valuable. Yeah, I also have a photo book. Then sometimes it likes to load and sometimes it doesn't, but it's just more portraits of family and family friends in that same portraiture style. So yeah, you can see my website here. And yeah, thank you so much. I was interested in helping out with this because in high school, I think the most pivotal classes for me were art and yearbook. And I think that art in its many capacities, whether it be multimedia or painting or writing or photography, they're all really great in being able to like explain yourself. And I guess, especially during really hard times like right now, when we see issues like COVID-19 and inequities of how the pandemic has affected marginalized people, or police brutality and how it's affected especially Black communities. It's really a way to give a voice to yourself and grab attention. And I think that I'm really grateful that I got to see everyone's art and how they've honed in on their talents. And I hope that you all continue to find passion with it and continue to find it fun and liberating. Yeah.
I had the opportunity of meeting through Zoom the prize winners and asking them about their artwork, their artist statements, and a little bit more about what they do in their lives.
My name's MJ Roddy, my pronouns are she, her, and I go to Cottage Grove High School and I'm a senior. So this is a mobile piece I made that features the jingle codes typically found on a traditional Native American regalia for the jingle dance. It's wrapped in some of the headlines and events that have happened this past year. They are hanging from a tree branch. The traditional jingle dance is done by female caregivers and symbolizes healing. This year, many competitive and non-competitive jingle dancers danced to heal those with COVID and rid the earth of this pandemic. This represents my hope for new life we will have once we are all reunited. These trying times will hopefully bring us closer together to heal flesh wounds created by division. The dance was done initially by the Ojibwe tribe, which is a large part of my own heritage. I learned this dance at a very young age. My grandma encouraged my sister and me to embrace this part of our culture. I look back on my childhood dances with fond memories. It also symbolizes and recognizes powerful Indigenous women. Dances often spark community involvement and interaction. It often is featured in celebrations. When designing this, I wanted to capture a dancer's movement as the cones would blow through the wind and jingle. The jingle dance is a prayer dance. I hope and have faith that there will be another side to what seems like a crazy year. I basically just kind of compiled all the different headlines. It ranges from natural disasters to the Black Lives Matter movement to COVID to murder hornets, UFOs. Like you can really see them all on there. And then I got the cones, and they're just like metal cones that you could put on a jingle dress, but it's not necessarily for that. And then I tied it with fishing line onto just a tree branch I just went out and found in my backyard. And then I used decoupage to put the paper around it. And then I just kind of decided where I wanted to hang them based on what the branch looks like and that oval shape, I guess. But that was basically the process of it. And the actual materials of the jingle cones were probably the most is the reason the inspiration I had to do the art project. I wouldn't say I have aspirations to be an artist, but I like crafts, and so it's just fun for me to do art projects. I probably couldn't do detailed paintings and drawings, but I really like collages and stuff, and it's kind of like a hanging collage is how I put it. Teachers described my involvement. It's basically throw a dart and I'm probably in it. So I've been student council for 4 years. I'm the vice president of our student body. I'm the president of our Interact Club, which is the youth version of Rotary, which is a service club. And then I'm also serving on their district board for our region. I'm the vice president of our Key Club, which is the youth version of Kiwanis. I'm an officer for our Spanish Club and our Future Business Leaders of America Club. I'm the co-chair for our Youth Advisory Council with the city, so I do a lot of local government and understanding that. I'm involved in Capital Ambassadors, which is at the state level, and then I'm also involved with a program that I got involved with this year is the United States Senate Youth Program, where I was able to attend to Washington virtually for a week and learn about all the different forms of federal government. I'm doing a lot of equity work in school districts and around schools and how we can improve that on the state level with ODE, developing equity councils for a bunch of different school districts. And I also do sports, so I'm a varsity captain for water polo and swimming, so I do a lot. I'm planning to attend Cornell University to study industrial and labor relations, which is a degree in social sciences. So I kind of want to focus on people and public service, and I just want to serve people in that way, whether that ranges from social worker perspective with a psychology, sociology background, or more in policy and developing laws that will help people. So that's what I want to go into. So hopefully I can go to college in person and fly across the country safely. It's kind of like what's on my mind right now. And then obviously graduating high school would be pretty nice.
My name is Alana Tweed. My pronouns are she, her. I am a senior. I go to Oregon City High School. This is a piece I made on maroon construction paper with Prismacolor colored pencils. I was trying to capture all of the jumbled up feelings I've been having throughout this past year. The top panel was the one I created first. I created it after watching our Capitol get stormed by violent protesters and remembering this past September when fires ravaged Oregon, forcing over 500,000 people to evacuate. I felt emotional resonance between the two. Both were larger, uncontrollable by me, and like the Capitol, when the fires and the smoke got close enough, we too had to leave our home. But this felt unfinished. I know objectively that there are good things happening in the world. I don't want fear to be the entire story. I added to the piece the bottom panel, focusing on all of the good brought about by people who don't look at what is, but instead towards what could be. The people who changed this nation's course degree by degree towards common good. I made this piece to highlight them and to remind myself that there is still good all around us, even when I focus on the bad. My purpose in the piece was a little too full, if I'm to be honest. I'm in AP Studio Art right now, and so I made it as one of my concentration pieces. And my theme for my concentration is scale. So what I was thinking about when making that piece, was how small I felt personally around all the things that were happening. I'm just one person and I'm seeing all of these things on the news that affect me personally, but not in any way that I can control. So I was thinking about that when I was making it. I was thinking especially about, I remember a lot of the posing and a lot of the artwork on the top half was based on reporters' photographs of the storming of the Capitol, of specifically this man who broke into the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office, and I don't know. I tried to capture that emotion and that frenetic energy, but I remember this other photograph that our art teacher showed us in our class last year before everything, and it was when there's several photographs of this happening, but when peaceful protesters would put flowers in the rifles of police officers and stuff like that, and I felt that was poignant and I wanted to include that in my piece, so I put that in the bottom half. And yeah, I tried. It is a dichotomy, but I wanted to focus on the good instead of the bad. Art's what I do, and it's like, if I don't have words for it, I just sort of do it, and I try to think about it, and I try to think about it critically, and I try to be intentional with everything I make to make sure it's saying the things I want it to say. Yeah, I've been starting to do a ton lately. Me and my friends have started like a community horticulture group, which sounds a lot more impressive than it is, maybe. I don't know. But we've been working with Mary S. Young, the park in West Lynn, and we've been growing stuff and shoveling bark chips for their pollinator garden, and that's been really fun. I have been doing girls rugby. That's starting up. Our first games are going to be on Saturday, so that's pretty exciting. I don't know, I have a ton of stuff going on right now. I didn't used to for the longest time, but now since things are opening up a little bit, I'm feeling a little bit better about doing things outside of my home. And I am 18 now, so hopefully I can get my vaccine soon. My dream ideally is to work in the arts. It's difficult, obviously, to get an education in the arts. It's a very expensive college field. Um, but I hope to, I'm not entirely certain. I think maybe work in illustration or maybe like commercial media, like video games or animated series, stuff like that. Commercial art would be nice.
My name's Amy Nguyen. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a senior at International School of Beaverton. For this art piece, I use small plywood and wood stain paint and acrylic paint, popsicle sticks and polymer clay. And ever since I was little, my family mostly spoke Vietnamese, and we were Vietnamese, and we constantly go to Chinese restaurants for family gatherings. And it's because we didn't have any Vietnamese restaurants, any ethnic, there were probably one pho place. And I used to wish there were more Vietnamese restaurants to go to. And since I had to go to a Chinese restaurant, and now I don't mind eating at Chinese restaurants because I'm able to understand more about Chinese foods and cultures. It has been easier for me to communicate with friends who are Chinese, and I was also able to learn the differences between Vietnamese and Chinese culture, and how similar the two cultures are. Going to a very white elementary school, I was often asked to have people say, "The food I brought to lunch was disgusting." I had kids who would say, "Ew," which made me start to step away from food from my culture. I found this a very normal part of my life, to not eat any foreign food around my friends. I will still avoid bringing those types of foods just because I didn't want any questions about it. I don't blame people for questioning or making weird remarks, since society made a lot of offensive Asian stereotypes, because people just need to be educated. And I wanted to sort of educate people through this art piece. Since the coronavirus happened, I was able to start appreciating part of my Chinese heritage after the hate crimes that have occurred to many Asians due to the coronavirus. Many people have been scared to go to Chinese restaurants because people think that there's coronavirus at the Chinese restaurants. Since coronavirus came to China, due to many of the Chinese-owned restaurants and businesses have closed down, many business owners have been beaten by racist people. I wanted to showcase that Chinese restaurants are a beautiful thing and shouldn't be stereotyped as dirty or smelly food. I was inspired by many Chinese restaurants I have been to, and one restaurant in particular that I remember going to had a small mural of the Great Wall of China. I remember admiring it while I was enjoying my food, so I thought of making a mural of the Vietnamese landscape as the wall, while incorporating mostly the Chinese restaurant aspects to the sculpture as well. So at my school, I take IB art, and I've been at this IB art I've been doing IB art since junior year. And so my art teacher makes us do these pieces, and it we had to do about 5 pieces at the end of the year. And so I had to find my passion. You have to find your thing in art. It could be media painting or digital art or anything like that. So then I did a lot of painting, and I did enough stuff to the point where I just couldn't make the same thing just a bit different. So I was so interested in interior designing, and so I thought, oh, maybe I can make this Chinese restaurant and have these 2 walls showcase this restaurant. I don't want I couldn't make a dollhouse because that would be just big. I want people to focus on a certain room, and so doing good like I went to China when I was a freshman, and I didn't want to be there, but I actually had like a really great time being there. I met so many new people, and so when I got into art, I decided to be like inspired and use like certain places I went to that had like the best memories and make it into art. So when I went to China, there was this Chinese restaurant I saw, and it was so peaceful, and had this mural of like this Great Wall of China, and it inspired me to just make this piece of art just focusing on this Chinese restaurant that I saw. And so I just thought it would be a great idea. And when I was making the piece, I was like very skeptical of like, I don't know how I'm gonna go make these walls. But making the two walls were, I thought was so easy, but it was like pretty much the hardest thing. I had to like retry like 3 times, even though I was so experienced with acrylic. And then for the chairs and tables, I use like my knowledge of like playing Barbies, and I always like playing with the miniature doll houses and the miniature like chairs. So I would just like make the chairs and make all the little miniature food, and I just end up enjoying it because I still kind of like, if I could, I would still play with Barbies and miniature furniture and stuff. So I made that. Like since coronavirus has happened, I didn't think that Asians would be attacked. I just thought, it came from China. Hopefully, no one would be dumb enough to mention it, but people did, and no, in a way, it's really bad, and due to coronavirus, I've been able to realize that Asian lives been Asian stereotypes, racist remarks have been normalized, and due to that, I wanted to also add on for my project that I noticed a lot of people didn't want to go to Chinese restaurants because of what was going on, and I wanted to just make this project just Chinese restaurants are not then you won't get COVID. That's Asian culture is beautiful. I am quarter Chinese, but I think any culture, any Asian restaurant it shouldn't be normalized. People shouldn't be afraid to travel to an Asian country just because of the stereotypes around it. The Chinese government hasn't been so great, but you shouldn't blame the whole country for it. It's not, they can't control it. And so I think, people, since COVID dropped the airplane prices, I've seen people dream to go to Italy, but they didn't want to go to China because they just didn't want to deal with the stereotypes. They want to just make that. Well, I activities I've done, I'm in Chinese Honor Society. I'm also vice president of National Art Honor Society. I'm part of a creative team for Oregon Youth Climate Strike. I also do tennis right now, and I have done track last year. I did this Chinese bridge camp when I was a freshman. Right now, one of the activities I found out I enjoy is doing art and IB art. Yeah. I hope that I can pursue architectural engineering and be able to make certain buildings for people who are in need and make it I live in the Portland area, and I see a lot of homeless people, and I hope I could be able to make shelters for those people.
Hi, my name is Olivia Haynes. My pronouns are she/her. I'm 17 years old and I am a junior at Clackamas High School. My piece depicts a black girl with a blue mask and a shirt crumpling and tearing into pieces. That girl is supposed to represent me. My entire life I have gone to PWIs, which are predominantly white institutions, where experiencing racism is nothing new to me. The shirt has 5 words that I have heard for years and stereotypes of being a black girl. The red represents the negative connotations with these words, and the words are ratchet, loud, ghetto, violent, and angry. These words are thrown at black women and girls from a young age. The shirt falling apart represents letting go of these negative stereotypes and stigmas surrounding me as a young black woman. Being able to let go of simply just words can be so freeing, and words are so powerful when they have been said to you over and over that simply being able to break free is a feeling beyond compare. The mask has names of black women that have been victims of police brutality, with Breonna Taylor in the middle. So many victims of police brutality are black women, and many of their cases have been pushed aside or deemed unimportant because these systems simply do not care. The blue is also for Breonna Taylor. I included a mask because the coronavirus and pandemic have drastically affected black women at such a high rate compared to their white counterparts. When black women are in medical care, medical professionals do not take them as serious or try to minimize their pain, meaning black women do not get the treatment they so rightly deserve. So yes, everyone is affected by this pandemic, but black women suffer in medical care every single day of their lives. The yellow at the top around the hair and head represent the brightness and promise of a new future, where black women are able to let go of the stereotypes that have weighed them down, but also carry with them the victims before them and making it a better and brighter world for those to come. My process went through 2 phases essentially. I wanted to do watercolor at first because I like the way when you use watercolor it can bleed. But I ultimately decided to do acrylic on a canvas because that is what I specialize in and what I like to do the most. And I wanted it to have words in order to be able to perceive it in a different way. And I feel when you have words on your art, it adds to the experience of what people look at when they see it. And I chose those 3 colors, first of all, because they're primary colors, and as well because they're 3 very bold and bright colors that can be perceived in any type of way.
And I knew I wanted it to be like meaningful to me personally, and thinking about like what has been going on in the world for the past year, what I've experienced, and like my experience as well as like my sisters and people close to me. So I felt like obviously I wanted it to have some sort of impact on people as well as be something that I would like to look at.
My artwork is kind of my safe place. I'm able to express myself through art in ways that I can't express myself through words, and being able to do art is kind of freeing for me. I am vice president of my high school's Black Student Union, so I'm very heavily involved in that leadership as well as working with different affinity groups in my high school, promoting diversity and trying to build curriculum with our district. We recently had a Black History Month assembly, which was basically a documentary on what it's like to be a Black kid going to Clackamas High School and in the North Clackamas School District. So I was very heavily working on that, and right now I am working on planning historically Black college and university field trips for my BSU in the next coming years. In the future, I would like to be a nurse, specifically a pediatric nurse. I think having people that look like you in that field at a young age is very inspiring to see, and it makes you feel like you can do it as well. In my 17 years, I've never had someone who looked like me that was taking care of me or simply taking my temperature and giving me a shot at the pediatrician. I think it's important that we have people who look like us in those fields, especially medical fields.
Congratulations to all of our prize winners. Thank you to everyone who has made this scholarship possible. We would like to thank the Greenfield family, the Fire Rose Foundation, and the Bonnie and Peter Reagan Fund at the Oregon Community Foundation for funding this project. If you are interested in Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility and learning more about the work that we do, please go to oregonpsr.org, to our website, and read more about our Peacework group and our Healthy Climate Action Team. And you can also sign up for email alerts. Thank you for your time.